Welcome, everybody, to our first Zoom workshop that we're doing with the Canadian Deprescribing Network. Some of you may know them, some of you may not, but you're going to find out more today. It's my great privilege to introduce our speaker, Camille Gagnon. Camille has agreed to give this conference to us, and we're very honored to have her. Camille is the Assistant Director of the Canadian Deprescribing Network. She's a pharmacist and works in a family health clinic in Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. She has experience in clinical program management, community pharmacy, and teaching to pharmacy students and technicians. She's a passionate medication safety advocate and cherishes every opportunity to share her knowledge and passion with others. So thanks very much, and I'll hand it over to our guest. Thank you for joining us, Camille.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you to everyone for being connected today. It's such a great opportunity. I assume everyone is hearing me. If I can just see yeses in the chat box, that sounds okay. Yes, Ruth's telling me sounds okay. All right, so ready to go, ready to roll. I really want to thank, Vanessa and the whole team really at the Seniors Action Quebec. I do want to flag Ruth Pelch's hard work to put this session on. You were mentioning, Vanessa, that it's a start in terms of virtual offer. I think it's more than ever important to be able to reach out. We are feeling isolated, I feel, and we know how hard it's been hitting with this whole health crisis situation, the seniors in Quebec who have felt isolated. So I just want to say thank you to Ruth. Thank you for this effort to offer some sense of connectivity with people everywhere in the province. And as Vanessa was mentioning, today it's a session. We're going to be talking about an important topic, obviously for me as a pharmacist and through the position I hold at the Canadian Deprescribing Network. And I hope that we're also going to be able to go over the realm of this circle. So asking you to share this information with your network. And also I know that small clips will be put online after on a YouTube channel. And so if you're interested and you found this information to be useful, I'll remind you at the end again, but you'll be able to share it with others as well. So without further ado, let's just dive into our topic today, which is medication. Obviously, I'm a pharmacist, so I'm here to talk about really what makes my bread and butter, I guess I can say. Hopefully it's not a Frenchism, but certainly talking about why we need to be cautious with the way we use medication today, because we're noticing that certain trends are appearing and that the public needs to be aware and needs to be really on the lookout for signs, symptoms, and kind of those symptoms of perhaps using too many medications or maybe not using the right ones. So when we get the public on board and we get health professionals on board, then we just move forward towards preventing harm caused by medication. But we'll learn all about that later as we go. So our plan for today, I've divided it in 3 broad questions that will kind of guide our discussion. The first point that we want to address today is, why does aging in itself make us more sensitive to the effects of medications? I'd say that this isn't a concept that's necessarily acquired or known by that many individuals, but this is something that needs to be known so that we realize that, well, we change with time, unfortunately not like we'd like often, but our medications often stay the same, and it shouldn't be that way. And a lot of the considerations that need to be really on the table when we look at medicine and aging. Well, I'll bring these points in our first part of our presentation. The second part of our presentation will go from the individual to the human to the actual medication itself. So when should we be really looking? When should we be on the lookout for the risks of or medications, really? So when do the harms perhaps outweigh the benefits? So it's always a balance of both of these, effects. So we'll have to look at that together. I'll give examples of specific medications that can carry more risk than benefit. especially in the older adult population. So that may be something that you're looking for today in terms of examples. And the last part is the hands-on part. So how can we as patients, we're all patients in a way, we've all sought care at one point, but we're also, a lot of us are caregivers for other individuals. We're also citizens. How can we change the trend? How can we have an impact on how things are evolving? And I see that we are already getting questions in the chat box. Please go ahead, enter them as we go, and we'll be for sure looking at your questions at the end. And if I don't get a chance to answer your question at the end, we'll follow up after. So please use the chat function. We'd love to get your feedback or just comments and questions. Our organization, we're located actually, if a lot of you may be in the Montreal area, I don't know, but if you are, we're located at the Montreal, l'Institut de Gériatrie, l'Institut Universitaire de Gériatrie de Montréal, so right on Queen Mary in front of the Oratoire Saint-Joseph. So our organization is located in their research center, and our funding comes mostly from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. So we're not here to sell anything. I mean, you can do what you want with this information today, but I mean, in the end, there is no conflict in terms of financial investment on my behalf or for this organization. We're just doing this to improve the health of seniors in Canada. Hopefully we can have an impact. So I always like to start off my presentations by saying I did not become a pharmacist to go out and say medications are bad. Okay, so I truly believe that they bring a lot of good to individuals and citizens and the population. They are behind, like they are one of the reasons why our population today in Canada lives older than ever in the history of human life. Unfortunately, you might have heard that it may go down in the next years because of different health issues like obesity, and also, well, we're talking about opioid crisis, so like medication. So we see a lot of the young individuals dying. That's quite sad. But in terms of the medicine, it has brought us so many benefits in terms of health. So I just want to start off and just give everyone a kind of a disclaimer here. Don't go home. You're already home, so just once you close this presentation, don't stop all your meds. It's the last thing I want you to do. But always keep in mind that they are there for many good reasons. I mentioned necessary for health, yes, in many ways. Now just ask yourself, what would be the broad categories why you or someone in your entourage takes meds? You probably could regroup these reasons into two broad categories. I like to classify them into improving symptoms is the first one, and the second condition would be to manage chronic conditions. So let's just start off with the chronic conditions. That's probably the main reason why seniors take medications today in Canada, because chronic conditions are just exploding in terms of, we have examples here like diabetes, high blood pressure, or conditions like arthritis, arthrosis, etc. So individuals will be taking medications to prevent these conditions from further evolving or further degrading and becoming more severe. So we're really controlling them. By definition, these conditions like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, you may know, is often a condition that we find in terms of the lungs as well in older adults. Well, they don't go away, unfortunately, the name says it. So with medication, we're not able to go back in time and erase them from your body, but we're able to keep them at bay and prevent complications. Complications of diabetes would be, eyesight, problems with vision. We could have problems with foot ulcers, so our wounds don't heal as well. We can have issues with our nerve pain that's constant, as well as kidney problems. So those are just examples that by keeping the blood sugars low with diabetes, we're controlling it, and preventing inflammation in the body with other medications, we're preventing complications. So that's one of the main reasons. The second one is improving symptoms. You see it there. I would just make it a distinction between the managing chronic conditions. Often what we're trying to do is extend the life of the individual, right? We're trying to prevent further problems. Symptom management in general is really just for quality of life. If I have a headache now, I take a Tylenol or whatever, I guess I'll feel better, but I won't live longer because of it. I'll just be able to go on, function, give my presentation, etc. But symptom management really focuses on the quality of life. And we know that with older adults, quality of life is, in terms of the importance, is really, really important when we look versus the quantity of life. So a lot of older adults will say, well, you know, I don't want to live longer, much longer if I'm very sick at that point. So the symptom management is as important for a lot of individuals as well. So I would say these are the two broad categories in which medications really make a difference for patients. And then, yeah, the last one, prolonging life expectancy, would fall under the chronic conditions. So when we're lucky enough, the medication does make a difference enough to extend life expectancy in a population. So all great reasons for taking medications. Don't get me wrong. They do a lot of good. And I work in a clinic. I sometimes work in a pharmacy. I dispense medication. So there's a reason why we dispense them. So why all the fuss, Camille? Why are you here today to talk about this issue? I guess it's important for me to kind of make this clear. I'll just start off by showing you a quote from, and this quote would tell you two things: that medication overuse, medication harm is not a Canadian problem, maybe unfortunately so. It's a quote from the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. So it's a problem everywhere in the world, okay? So his quote was, and I think it says a lot: if medicine harm was a chronic disease, now it would already be a national health priority. So why is it not such a thing? In terms of the issue with medicine harm, it's that often it falls through the cracks and it's not identified as such. So someone will have a side effect like a fall, be confused, etc., have an effect that brings them in the hospital, but they won't be regrouped and identified as such, and so it goes kind of under the radar. We know that we're targeting today more than ever conditions like cancer, like diabetes, and that's good. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, but medicine harm is really flying under the radar, and no one is really tackling it specifically. So we're not necessarily as aware as we should be, and perhaps not taking enough precautions. So just that's kind of like our strong statement to start. And another thing I like to do to start off is to put everyone on the same page in terms of medicine use in Canada. I want to ask you, and you can use the chat if you want to enter your guesses, if you're comfortable to take the risk. How many meds really is the question. So what percentage, so we're looking at a percentage of people who live at home and are considered older adults. In this case, that means 65 plus. The reason we're using this age is in Canada, you become, in general, admissible for you can actually apply for the public drug programs in most provinces, or actually all provinces at that point. So 65 plus who live at home, what percentage of these individuals take at least 5 or more different prescription medications? So don't forget, we're excluding all vitamins and minerals, anything you buy off the shelf of the pharmacy, we're not able to account for. So would anyone want to take a guess in the chat box? I'll wait a few seconds for you to give you a chance to think about it. 5 or more. So we're seeing, yeah, I mean, one medication, I see 40% by Nicolas, 5 by Marc, and 10 by Ruth, 15 by Marie-Claude. Oh, Ruth is correcting 70, Phil is 70, Vanessa 35. Okay, I'm seeing numbers that are quite varied. Well, we'll show you the first is 66%. So 2 out of 3 seniors in Canada take at least 5 medications. So that's just to start off, and prescription medications. Then just let's go to the next level. So we're using the same group of individuals. Remember, I'm excluding people who don't live in home. So long-term care patients are excluded from them, which are usually patients whose health is not as good. So now we're looking at same group, but now 10 or more medications that were prescribed. So you see the photo next to it. It becomes something to manage every day. What percentage of individuals use at least 10? Do you think it's much lower than the first group? I mean, they're part of the first group. I see 55, 45, so a bit lower. So it's 27% of older adults use at least 10 medications. So we're at one out of 4. And then the last question that I'm going to ask you today in our medication guessing game, is we're looking at people that are much older now, so 85 plus. I want to ask you, what percentage of older adults who are 85 plus take at least 10 medicines? And really, maybe the percentage isn't necessarily what I'm looking out for here, but I want to ask you, do you think that if we're older, we take more medications than the older adults that are younger, or less? So as we grow older, do medication tend to accumulate, or are there less? Some people could think, well, they're 85, so they've lived longer, they may be healthier. I see more, older more as well. You guys are quite good, actually. Yes, it is more. So we're older and we take 38% of cases, at least 10 medications. But I always like to remind everyone that you know it more than I do. Older adults is a very diverse population. And so we're giving stats today, and we very much know that some older adults don't take any medication. Some of them have to take medication for different chronic or conditions, but that more than half, 56% of older adults report being in good health, and over 90% live independently in the community. So my goal isn't to portray the population as being sick or anything, but older adults are using a significant portion of amount of medication, and they are the group, you won't be surprised, they are the group when we look at the age spectrum that uses the most medications. So we are now concerned about about older adults using that many medications. And one of the reasons is, and that's the first question that we want to ask today, is aging makes individuals more sensitive to the effects of medication. And now we're going to dive in and explain why that is the case, okay? And just to go to kind of set the basis again, we did mention we're older, so we often need to take more medications. And why is that? And that's because our chronic conditions tend to evolve. You guys were good, you guessed. You know, when we're 85 plus, we are often taking more medications than when we're 65 plus. The reason is that nowadays, chronic conditions will evolve, and the treatments for these conditions will also become more intensive, more aggressive as they progress. And if we just take diabetes as an example, if today at 65 you're diagnosed with diabetes, after we've talked about exercise and diet, which I hope we will, then perhaps we'll have to consider starting a medication, a pill, often called metformin. And with time, as diabetes evolves, you may need to be adding new oral medications, new tablets, etc., even injections. So that same individual who has diabetes at 85 may now be on 3 or 4 medications. So that's one of the main reasons why we see medication numbers increase with time. And that's a concern because the numbers, as we know, increase, but the body becomes more sensitive. And here is an image of a human body with key organs there. And this slide is important because it'll explain really why our body becomes more sensitive to medications as we age. So there's 4 points that I'm going to flag here, but there are 2 arrows that show very important organs in the body. The one at the top, probably the most important organ we have, the brain, or I don't know if we can actually say that, but it's a very important one. So as we age, our brain becomes more sensitive to drug effects, to the effects of medications. So there are many reasons for this, but our brain is pretty much sealed in a box. It's very protected by in terms of where it is in the head and in the skull. And then when we take medication effects with age, it tends to be able to penetrate a bit more in the brain and affect us with more intensity than when we were younger. So I guess you can ask yourself what type of effects that would mean. Well, that can include being sleepy, being drowsy, being really dizzy. So all these effects can become exacerbated in terms of the medicine side effects with age. Then I'll ask you in terms of your personal experience or what it may not be applied to you perhaps, but with age, we know that we tend to accumulate either more muscle or more fat. That's a question for you. Easy to answer. Unfortunately, with age, we accumulate more fat. And a lot of the medicine likes to accumulate in the body fat. It lingers in the fat. And so the issue is that with a body that has more fat, the medication kind of sticks in and stays in there and has a much longer effect. So medications stay longer in our body because once we're older, we have less muscle and more body fat. So that's the reason number 2. So our brain is more sensitive, we have more fatty tissue, and so the medication lingers.